Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ray. I'm a detransitioned male. And today I'm talking about trans women and male socialization because this is one of the things that they hate talking about. They hate talking about how males and females are socialized differently in childhood and going through adolescence, precisely because of innate sexual differences between males and females. And those sexual differences are based on the sexual dimorphism of the human species, based on the fact that one half of the species are the ones that produce babies, and the other half are the one who impregnate the ones who produce babies. And that fundamental difference creates a difference in socialization. And trans women don't like to be reminded of this because it like basically triggers their dysphoria. It triggers their dislike of their maleness. It reminds them that they will never be female. They can only wish to be female. And so just no matter how many surgeries and how many hormones you go on, these trans women will never have the same experience as a young female growing up in society. They just won't. And that is troublesome for them. Okay, let's watch this video where this trans feminine content creator is talking about socialization, because you'll sort of see how they deny the innate sexual differences, and they sort of don't really understand what it means to be socialized female or socialized male. Okay, let's watch.
Yeah, socialization is this really frustrating and annoying transphobic dog whistle because it utilizes half truths. And because it utilizes this half truth, then it really shuts down these important and really interesting conversations. Because the thing is when you talk about gendered socialization, when those studies are being conducted, think if you're a researcher, who would you want to exclude in your population, in your sample, for your study, when you're looking at the impacts of gender and how that impacts someone's socialization? Who would you exclude? Probably the 1% of the population who has a completely different experience with gender and who actually experiences both sides of the coin.
No, you do not experience both sides. This is the lie. This is the false lie. A young trans feminine person, a trans identified male, or someone who will grow up to become a trans identified male, they do not experience both sides because there's only two pathways you can go down with your puberty. You can go down the male puberty or the female puberty. Because one set of puberty will make it such that under normal circumstances, you're capable of becoming pregnant. And the other pathway will make it such that you're capable of impregnating someone. And that fundamental, innate biological difference about, the people who reproduce and the people who impregnate, sperm and egg, that's what it comes down to. There's only two sexes. There's the large gamete producers and the small gamete producers. Do you make sperm or do you make egg? Can you potentially give birth to a baby, or can you not potentially give birth to a baby? That's what it's all about. And so a young trans feminine person, which is really better conceptualized as a gender nonconforming male, because there's no such thing as a true trans kid. There's no fundamental, innate, metaphysical, intrinsic difference between an extremely gender nonconforming male and a trans identified male. There's just not. They're the same thing. And so, yes, a trans identified male, or I mean, a gender nonconforming male, an extremely gender nonconforming male in childhood, going through puberty, they're not going to act the same as other males. That's why they're gender nonconforming. But that does not mean that they experienced what it was like on the other side to be female, because they're not female. And socialization fundamentally comes down to your innate sexual differences. That's what it comes down to. And they just won't experience that. So they will have a non-typical male socialization but that doesn't mean that they have a female socialization.
You would not include trans people in this study. And so it's like then they're bringing up like socialization as this like, oh, it's this unchanging, immutable thing. Like, so they're just stuck with it forever. It's like, no.
So this is kind of misleading because yes, the reason why socialization is immutable is because a male can never know what it was like to grow up female. That male can never know what it was like to go through true female puberty. And even these young kids who tragically are put on these puberty blockers for non-medical reasons because of the ideological apparatus of pediatric gender medicine. And I don't support that. I don't think there's any evidence, as the CAS review and all the other systematic reviews show, that giving children puberty blockers is not a good thing. But even the children who have been put on puberty blockers as part of this gender protocol, they don't experience the other side. They also don't go through female puberty or whatever, because it's just not the same. You cannot replicate the other sex's puberty. You can just disrupt your own natural male puberty. And you can sort of go through a distorted version of male puberty by giving you cross-sex hormones. But that is not the same thing as replicating identically the experience of being a female who goes through female puberty. And that fundamental difference, it creates differences in socialization, because a trans woman, a trans identified male, will never have to worry about getting pregnant. And if we're thinking about socialization, that difference between a capability of getting pregnant, that just creates fundamental differences in socialization. That goes back to evolutionary psychology 101. The most fundamental difference psychologically, sociologically, between the two sexes, between males and females, it comes down to which is the half of the species that has to invest more resources in child rearing. The female invests more resources. They invest more resources in the production of an egg versus the production of millions of sperm. So eggs are costlier to make. Also, the female invests way more in 9 months of pregnancy and then the subsequent, years of breastfeeding. So massive parental investment. This is called the parental investment hypothesis, which is that based on which half of the species, male or female, invest more necessarily into child rearing, that's going to predict differences in behavior, differences in psychology. And differences in behavior and psychology lead to fundamental differences in socialization. And this is immutable because males can never replicate that. They can never, ever, ever replicate that.
Socialization, you're trying to tell me that you think socializing based is going to stick with you forever no matter how much you are changed? Like, have you ever read a book? What happens? Character development. They go through things and those experiences change them. And in that exact same.
But you cannot change. You cannot change your life such that you experience what it was like to be female, growing up female, going through female puberty, and being socialized as a result of that innate sexual differences. And often, if you listen to to like females talk about their experiences of what it was like being socialized as a young female, the most formative experiences like have to do with these sexual differences, these innate sexual differences, things like sexual objectification, things like that. And that boils down to fear of getting pregnant when you don't want to be pregnant. Why? Because of the parental investment differences, because a female has to invest way more into pregnancy, because it's so much costlier. Pregnancy can be dangerous. You can die from becoming pregnant. So that is a very serious thing. So yes, there's a massive difference, and all the socialization differences stem from that fundamental difference in parental investment, which is the fundamental basis of evolutionary psychology, which is the basis of the socialization and the psychological differences between males and females. It all comes down to that because we are a sexually dimorphic species, just like every other animal on the planet.
Same way, it's just like even if you grow up being male socialized, if you're a trans woman, the more that you just exist in your like with transitioning and everything, the more you exist, especially the more you're accepted, the more and more you then are socialized as a woman. And
No, you're not. So you're socialized as a extremely gender non-conforming male. Metaphysically speaking, intrinsically speaking, there's no difference between a trans-identified male socializing as a woman versus a extremely gender non-conforming male being socialized as a extremely gender non-conforming male. And when you get these extremely gender non-conforming males hanging out with women, spending time with women, picking up on how females communicate, like learning to 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 communicate in this more like female typical way. For the autogynephiles, this is typically done through imitation. They are social sponges. That they're chameleons. They're adapting. They're learning, and that's what this person is talking about. They're talking about how it's common for trans women to grow up male socialized because of their innate male biological differences. And then they spend time with women because these these trans women want nothing more than to be accepted as one of the girls, one of the women. They like crave that more than almost anything else. And so they start imitating, but they're like social chameleons. And it's sort of learning later in life. But the fundamental thing is that all those women, they're dealing with things like menstruation and pregnancy and breastfeeding and rearing children and, fearing, getting pregnant, getting, like assaulted or whatever. These are the things that are formative in the lives of females. And it has to do with the fundamental evolutionary psychological differences between the parental investment, those who can get pregnant and those who cannot. And I can already imagine that there's going to be some trans woman in my comment section right now saying, well, not all cis women can get pregnant. So therefore a cis woman who, grows up, has the same experience as like a trans woman. There's no difference there. That is not a counterexample because there's still fundamental innate sexual differences. Because even though you might not be capable of of like pregnancy, you're still going through female puberty, or your brain, your neurology, your psychology is developed based on the fact that there are innate neurological sex differences. There are innate differences between males and females. Evolutionary psychology has proven this, or at least substantiated it significantly with a lot of evidence showing that there are these innate sexual differences in the psychological behavioral patterns based on this fundamental parental investment difference. And that creates differences in socialization. So even if a young female grows up and, later in life that they will never be capable of becoming pregnant due to some, sexual developmental disorder or something like this, they still are belonging to that same general class of like beings, of like humans who have to think about this like fear, or they have to structure their lives around this parental investment thing. It's just one of these fundamental innate things. And even if there are, these extremely rare edge cases where you can say that, there's similarities of experience or whatever, there that ignores the fact that 99.9% of these autogynephilic males who develop their gender dysphoria after puberty, they develop their gender dysphoria after they've already gone through puberty, after they've already gone through the fundamental differences between males and females. You just can't take that back. So most of these autogynephiles, this person who I'm guessing is gynephilic, attracted to women, considers themselves like a trans lesbian or something, that they sort of use the experience of extremely gender nonconforming males that are gender nonconforming in childhood, which are usually of the homosexual, transsexual variety, very extremely feminine, naturally feminine males. They have a different experience than other males, but they also don't experience what it's like to be female. But they often use those cases of like, oh, well, what if you go on puberty blockers as like a young trans kid and you're going to experience the like same exact life, as if you were a cis girl who couldn't get pregnant or whatever. No, it's not the same. It is just not the same. Okay, let's keep watching.
Socialization changes. The only reason they present it as an unchanging thing is because they didn't consider trans people in the study. And then there's transphobic people being like, oh, yeah, it's your male socialization. It's like, oh, sorry, you're stuck with that. It's like, that's insane. That's like, oh, sorry, you were socialized to not have kids, so you're stuck with that, even though now you are a mother of 4. Like, it's
Do you hear these mental gymnastics? Fathering children by adding sperm to the equation. Your contribution to the equation is is like giving sperm, or you can adopt. But that is not the same as becoming pregnant, as menstruating and going through the menstrual cycle and becoming pregnant and breastfeeding and all these things. Like trying to and like trying to compare the raising of children, the parenting of children, versus the more fundamental act of giving birth to children, which is the quintessential female experience. That is the definitive thing that defines males and females relative to the evolutionary psychology parental investment hypothesis, which is that you can predict differences in psychology, differences in behavior based on which of the species, male or female, are the ones who invest more into parenting. And pregnancy, becoming pregnant, carrying the child in your body for 9 months, that is just fundamentally a different experience. That is what being a mother means. And yes, you can sort of take on these social roles. You can have your child call you a mother, but that doesn't mean you are a mother, because mothering has to do with parental investment, pregnancy, producing eggs. That's what it's all about. So
it's ridiculous in any other context. But yeah, and it honestly brings up an aspect of anytime people are citing these studies, it's just like, they didn't include me in that. Like, they didn't include my population. I'm an outlier. Like, duh.
you're not an outlier. You are, but you're an outlier for males, but you're still male. A outlier for males, we have a term for that. It's called a gender nonconforming male. But it doesn't mean you have this like female brain or this female essence, or that you can somehow like learn to be female, because you will never know what it was like to be female. You will never know what it's like to give birth to a child. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.